Hey everybody, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of Guerrilla Filmmaker. My name is Owen, and I will be the host of this show until the end of time. Last episode, I talked a bit how I go about writing a story's antagonist or bad guy. Today, I'm going to discuss something a little bit more straightforward, and that is the gorillas of the wild and how to find them. But first, a shoehorned word from our sponsor, Locations Hub. Locations Hub is a website used to find potential locations for a production. They also have a service for people who want to advertise their own locations for use, which is pretty cool. On the site, you can filter by type of location like industrial, residential, nature, etc., and by the general area like a state or town. I decided to search for a location that fit the parameters of industrial, shipyard, landscape, Arctic/snow, and sports mini golf in Wisconsin. Of course, this gave me no results, but it's cool that I had the option to sort by such a ridiculous request anyway. I know in the future I will definitely be using this website for my next shoot. Now, back to the show. So the whole point of guerrilla filmmaking is to get in, get your shots, and get out. I'm not here to promote trespassing or any other potentially criminal activity, but I will say sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to get the shot. For legal reasons, I'm joking right now. In reality, the best practice is to get permission when you want to film at places that aren't open to the public. And if you can't get permission, then find somewhere equally as good or better. Fortunately, Wisconsin is blessed in that you have all sorts of cool locations all around the state. We've got abandoned buildings, big cities, barns, forests, waterfalls, fields, you name it. If you look hard enough, you can find a place here. And what's lucky is that the Midwest is full of nice enough people that will probably let you film at their place, either out of generosity or, God forbid, for a price. I forgot to mention that this episode is about finding a location. So that's what we're talking about. Whether you have to pay to film somewhere or not, there are always going to be places here. And if Wisconsin isn't good enough, then you can always head down south just about any other state, as everywhere has its own catalog of places to be and monkeys to see. So how do you find these locations? One, websites like Locations Hub, like I talked about earlier. Two is word of mouth, which is what I usually use. And then just through connections with other people. Google Maps is how I have different friends, how they find these places. You can really just screw around on satellite view and look in your local area until you find something interesting. I'm not necessarily the master of location, but I've explored enough of the nearby county areas to have found some nice filming places. To be honest, I don't have much more to say about this topic, so I'm just going to show off a short reel of some footage I've taken while out and about. So yeah, that was my montage. Almost all of those shots I took around here, but a handful are from Indiana as well, which geographically is basically the same as Wisconsin. My point is that location scouting is really easy. Really, there are places to film just about anywhere you look if you look hard enough. That being said, that's about all I've got for the final episode of Guerrilla Filmmaker. I hope that you learned something from at least one of these episodes now, so thank you for watching, and peace out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of Creating Head On. So for the past 3 episodes, we've gone through all the different phases of making art, making your project. So we're going to recap those, and we're going to talk about what we've learned, starting with step number 1, pre-production. Pre-production is the process of thoroughly setting up and planning out what the process will be. This includes things like checking audio levels or making sure the video is coming through perfectly, making sure everything is well-rounded and coming through so there's no technical issues. This also comes down to planning what you're going to do, planning the content. How do you want to steer it? Where do you want things to go? The more you put into pre-production, the better it'll end up turning out, the smoother the process, and overall the faster it will be. And time is of the essence when it comes to things like this. A lot of it determines the flow as well, and I've talked about that time and time again throughout these 3 episodes. The flow and the process and everything that goes into making this is through trial and error. And that includes pre-production as well. So once you finish planning everything, you've checked the levels, you've checked the video, everything looks good. So now we're on to the main meat, the production. This is where magic happens. You have to, everything you planned, everything that you have made so far, you need to put into one cohesive project. This can definitely be the hardest part of the whole production process. At every turn, there is 100 different things that can go wrong. I believe it's Murphy's Law, what can go wrong will. For instance, audio. You can think the audio is perfect and it sounds fine in the headphones beforehand, and then something just craps the bed, and soon you're back at square one. Time to start again, buddy. Or the video. You didn't bring enough batteries for your camera. Now you can't do anything. You didn't get the filters right and it looks blown out. Good luck fixing that in post. A lot of things can go wrong, and through trial and error and time, lots and lots of time, you can really refine it and get a process down, get a workflow. Finally, at the end, we have post-production. Now, this one really sets the amateurs from the pros. This can completely change the tone and the pace, and everything about your project all comes down to post-production. It's like building a puzzle, but the puzzle is free range and you can do whatever you want, so it's not at all like a puzzle. And as I've yapped and blabbered on countless times, this takes a lot of time. Never underestimate that, especially when you're first getting into this stuff. Post-production really, really takes a long time, for a good reason. If you rush it, it's gonna come out terribly, and you won't be proud of it. But if you take too long, you might lose interest on it. It might not be fun or new or anything along those sorts. It depends. I say production is the hardest part, but post-production is mentally the hardest part. So we've gone through all the 3 steps of making your own content, figuring out your own workflow. Before we wrap up here, I'm getting a surprise word from our sponsor, and I think I will leave the last episode on that.
Hey there. This segment is actually sponsored by me. I have my own YouTube channel where I put a lot of the editing and the effort I talk about into these projects. One example is this video right here. Cool concept. I like that. All right. Next video is this one right here. It's beautiful. Pretty elegant, if I say so myself. It would really mean a lot if you took the time to check out my channel. You don't have to stay if you don't like it, but it really means more than you think. Thanks. Hey there. This segment is actually
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the final episode of Soul Stretch. This episode is going to be cut a little bit short today, so I'm going to be discussing with you a few different things and recapping what we learned so far in the last few episodes. So in the first episode, we focused on stretches to help with your shoulders and your neck. In the second episode, we focused on stretches to stretch your legs, hamstrings, and that group of muscles. And then in the last episode, we worked on stretches to stretch out your back. So in this episode, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about my experience with stretching, especially with dance. So I know I had mentioned that a lot earlier, how I was a dancer and had been dancing for many years. And stretching really was something that helped me become better in that era. Like with stretching, I was able to become a lot more flexible and a lot more I would say even build my endurance when I was dancing. So it really helped me a lot, and to this day, now that I'm a lot older from when I did start, well, I'm like 3 years older from when I started dancing or stopped dancing, I'm still able to do a lot of things flexibility wise, and that can be really helpful for me as well. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys a video of one of my dances from when I was in competition. This video is actually sponsored by the competition called Showstopper, and they are a dance competition that's all around the US, and they're a pretty big deal. They have a nationals competition every year. So this was a competition that I went to when I think I was 16 or 17. So I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that.
Antidote.
Empty thoughts start to crowd my mind. Am I only living to survive? Shake it off, but I've lost the drive. Just let me be, just let me be. Let me be okay. Inside my head, there's a new kind of poison and it's starting to spread. No one knows what goes on up inside my head. They don't think I need help, but I'm scaring myself. I just want to be okay. I just want to be okay. Voices in my head are coming to life. They're getting louder and I'm terrified. How do you run from your own mind? Is this what I've become? Take it back. What have I done? No one knows what goes on inside my head. There's a new kind of poison and it's starting to spread. But I didn't think the antidote was in my hands. I can change my plans. I can change my plans.
Okay, so as you can see, there was a theme to that. That was one of my solos. I think that was my first ever solo. And when I was in dance, I always wanted to have a solo. I was in dance for like 7 years before my mom paid for me to get one, and that was the only one I ever had. So I wanted to make it meaningful, and that's what I did. But as you can see, there's a lot of elements within that we kind of worked on throughout these episodes, and kind of also goes for inspiration that really you can, as long as you're sticking to it, you can really learn a lot of different things with stretching, whether it's dance-wise, whether it's throughout your daily life, whether it's to improve your health. There's lots of different things you can do. So that completes the final episode today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.
Hello everyone, welcome back to What the TKD, and I will be just quickly discussing what we discussed in our previous episodes. And I'll end this off with a short blooper reel to kind of end things off on a high note. Alright, for episode 1, we learned that Taekwondo literally means foot-hand art, as it focuses mainly on using your feet. It's very dynamic with a range of different techniques and is often described as the unity of body, mind, and life. It dates back to ancient Korea, where martial arts like Taekyon and Subak laid its foundation. General Choi Hong-hee is also credited as being the founding father of Taekwondo, as he helped promote the martial art and get it integrated into a lot of South Korea's practices. And we also learned that typical Taekwondo schools include things like sparring matches, board breaking, and forms. In episode 2, we learned a little bit about the school that I'm a part of. So my school, Kim's Taekwondo, was founded in 1973 by Grandmaster Young Sam Kim, having since trained thousands of students. Typical classes through Kim's Taekwondo include stretching, fighting drills, forms, and things like board breaking, among other things. And the last key point is that the use of your body and mind is also very important in Taekwondo. The use of your mind is also very important aside from the physical aspect of Taekwondo. In episode 3, we learned that many other martial arts are similar to Taekwondo, but are unique in their own right. Taekwondo is usually more linear than all other martial arts, even though it does have movements where real-life situations are being taught. When going into a Taekwondo class, it is important to be prepared by having the necessary materials to properly train, as well as emphasizing stretching exercises to avoid injury. Things like stances, power, and showing respect, for example, bowing in and out of class, are also very important in a Taekwondo class. All right, now that I have very quickly recapped all of the really important stuff from the previous episodes, I'd like to end this series off with a positive video that I hope you can all get a little bit of a laugh out of. Here's a quick blooper reel from the production phase from my video packages. However, World Taekwondo shifted focus. He shifted focus. This attention boosted global participation in the sport and worldwide institutional support, with advancements in safety equipment and scoring systems being made to continually enhance the fairness and accuracy of Taekwondo competitions. Oh wow. Preserving its rich history, and ensuring future. After that first, and was basically convinced that I was going to fail. This was easy. I did end up passing, but that came with the realization that I really needed to focus and practice much more for my black belt test. This sparked a fire in me that even through practice sessions that I didn't enjoy, classes that I didn't enjoy, this was just to give you all a rough idea of what your journey. Just gonna restart the whole section. Alright, with that ends this video segment, so I'm gonna turn it back over to the stream here. Alright, I hope you all got a little bit of a laugh out of that. That was really fun to make. So and that concludes the series for now, at least. See you all next time.
Hi there. Welcome back to the very last episode of Game Talks. Today, we'll be wrapping up the show and just going over some of our best moments. I'm your host, Brendan, and today we'll go over our first episode, which was all about microtransactions, the history of microtransactions in games, as well as how they're being used today and their controversies as well. So let's cut to the video, let's refresh our minds a little bit, and let's watch a little bit about microtransactions. Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Game Talks, the show where we dive deep into numerous topics surrounding gaming. I'm your host for today, Brendan, and today we'll be covering microtransactions in gaming, their controversies, and how people have responded to them. The first well-known microtransaction added to a video game was the Horse Armor DLC in The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Loot boxes are microtransactions where the reward is randomized from a pool of different items. Some are really bad and others are incredibly amazing. And in 2020, the UK National Health Service stated that loot boxes contribute to gambling addiction in minors. However, many game developers like EA refute that loot boxes are not gambling. In 2018, Belgium banned microtransactions from games entirely within the country. In addition, Australia recognizes loot boxes as gambling and includes video games in their Interactive Gambling Act of 2001, which targets online gambling sites. We should be viewed as consumers and as gamers and as people, and not as dollar signs to these corporations, and not as people who can just get addicted to the systems that they in place on us. Thank you for joining us this week. I've been your host, Brendan, and join us next time where we dive into another deep topic in gaming. I think for being a first episode, it went really smoothly. I think the topic overall, it was really interesting for me to go in and learn about and stuff like that. The very objective part of it, seeing all the controversies, and even reading about what other countries are doing to prevent microtransactions. I think overall it was a very objective, and I think overall a very powerful episode as well, especially to the call of action at the very end. Just overall, I think for especially being a first episode, it went incredibly smoothly, and I'm incredibly proud of it. If you haven't watched it, go back to episode 1, watch through all the morning commute, and also get to my segment as well on Game Talks about microtransactions. But moving on to our second episode that I did of Game Talks, it was AAA games versus indie games, and seeing how a few AAA titles have kind of fallen from their grace and how indie developers are starting to pick up the slack a little bit. So let's cut to the video. Let's get to some of the best snippets of that. Hi there, and welcome to Game Talks, where we dive into all sorts of gaming-related topics. I'm your host, Brendan, and in today's episode, we'll be covering a topic that's been affecting gaming quite frequently as of late: the battle between indie games and AAA games. It's a little difficult to get a true sense of how well indie games and AAA games do from just a sales standpoint alone, due to their differences in budget, development time, and many other factors. Let's take a look at the recently released indie hit Lethal Company. Lethal Company is a simple game at heart. Despite complex monsters and mechanics, it allows for these simply fun moments. Let's examine a AAA game to see what went wrong with it. Starfield was one of Bethesda's most anticipated titles. Starfield didn't re-innovate anything. They just used similar planet generation to make thousands of unique planets with the same things in a different combination. One of the more recent games that took the world by storm was Helldivers 2. Generally, many praised it for its incredibly fun gameplay and the atmosphere that it immersed gamers with. However, I believe the AAA aspects ruin the fun parts of this game. The last game we'll examine will be an indie game that I absolutely adore, and that I believe gets a lot of things right. And that indie game is Stardew Valley. The game is a finely polished mesh of interesting mechanics and features, which gives you the freedom to choose how to interact with the world. This has been yet another episode of Game Talks. I've been your host, Brendan, and I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Tune in next time for our next deep dive into yet another gaming topic. I think overall this episode, it was a bit of a objective and subjective episode as well, where, I looked at the hard objective monetary gross incomes that each game has made and the copies sold and stuff like that. It was interesting researching all of that and just, trying to compare them at least from that kind of a sales standpoint. However, like I said, it is so hard to just compare it directly from just numbers. And so that's where I kind of dive in to a bit more subjective look and get into the games a little bit, start analyzing them. And I think that was just an aspect of this episode that I really liked, was just picking apart each game and what I think it does right and what I think it does wrong. And especially, I don't think I clarified this enough in the episode, but not all AAA games, are bad, and not all indie developed games are, godsends, There are really good AAA games out there, and there's really good or really bad indie games out there. And it's just a really, just kind of picking the ones that are bad and not really cherry picking, but I feel like as of late there's been a huge increase of bad AAA games compared to indie games. But before moving on to our third and final recap of our third episode, I have a surprise segment sponsor. Unfortunately, I did not organize a graphic because I didn't know I'd be doing an ad sponsor, but this episode is sponsored by NZXT PCs. These PCs are all around, great PCs. I personally bought my pre-built PC. I had no idea how to build one, but thankfully there was an option for pre-built, so I didn't have to worry about, figuring out how to put a whole PC together and stuff like that. And so I was able to buy it. You know, it's relatively cheap for the components used and all of the parts to it. I've had my PC from them for about 2 years now, and it's been working great so far. You know, it can run all of my games. It has you know, enough storage to almost host any games. And have everything downloaded that I need to. It can even run all my editing programs, and I do everything from one PC. It's great. I mainly use it for gaming, but of course you can obviously, you know, if you have super beefy office work, you can buy a cheaper version and kind of use a PC for that as well. But thank you, Frenzy XT Computers, for sponsoring this segment of the video. And let's get to our third and final video, which is all about my top 5 favorite games. I think overall this was my favorite episode to go through and put together, but let's cut to the list and let's go back over my top 5 favorite games. Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Game Talks. I'm your host, Brendan, and today I'm going to be diving into a few games with a bit more of a subjective look, as today I'm going to be going through my top 5 favorite video games. At number 5 for my top 5 favorite games, I have Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It's just such a good mesh of systems and mechanics in place that just make you feel awesome, and it really makes you feel like a captain of your own ship. Moving on to my 4th favorite game, I have Baldur's Gate 3. I think the best thing that this game does is giving you a choice. Moving on, we'll go to my 3rd favorite game, which is Terraria. Speaking of progression, I think this is the best thing about the game, is how smooth the progression is. Number 2, again, following the same trend of giving you choice, and is also a fellow RPG, is Fallout New Vegas. Overall, the game is just incredible. The story and the choices that you can make in the story hold up to games that are releasing today. Let's get into my number 1 favorite video game of all time, and that has to be Minecraft. I think, again, where this game excels is allowing you to be creative. Let's get into an aspect of all these games that I haven't really talked about at all yet, and that is the music. C418 is the mastermind behind some of these iconic gaming pieces, and I believe you will recognize at least one of these songs if you're at least a little familiar with gaming. Thanks for joining me this week as I covered my top 5 favorite games. I've been Brendan, and I've been your host for Game Talks. That's all. And overall, I think I just have to say this episode was just my favorite. You know, just putting everything together, gathering background footage to use. I think it was super polished, super smooth. Overall, it was so much fun just going over and just talking about my favorite games, all the mechanics in them that just make them so fun. And overall, it was just a blast to put on and for me just to talk about. So that's been all for Game Talks. As always, I've been your host, Brendan, and that's it. I'm sure I'll see you around.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my final episode of Myths and Mysteries. I'm your host, Balin Anthony Tuifu, and I'm just going to be going over the episodes, kind of how I went about it, and I'm going to talk about how much I enjoyed the class, and I'm going to talk about our rivals at TC Weekly and how I enjoyed their things as well. So over the episodes, most of the time my episodes were okay, to give them a little credit. The Bigfoot episode I had no media with, but I did really enjoy making that episode. I loved researching Bigfoot and making all of the Photoshop pictures of me with Bigfoot. Big surprise, I didn't actually meet him. Oh no. For my second episode, I did Bloody Mary. I did a lot of research on Bloody Mary for that episode, but I still feel like that episode came a little flat, but I still enjoyed it a lot. Doing all that research about the real Bloody Mary, the fake one, blah, blah, blah. And then third was my episode that I lost everything for. I don't know where it went. It was supposed to be an episode where I was going to start talking about Mothman and then it'd go to something else, but I lost it all. Kaput, it's gone. I don't know where it went. But looking over the TC Weekly, which is our rivals, is what I'll say, I had a lot of fun watching what they do. It was really enjoyable watching what they did within their short amount of time in their groups. And big shout out to Liang over at TC Weekly. He made some of the best videos I've ever seen. He even put animations inside of his weekly videos, and he did it all alone. He decided to do that alone instead of in a big group, which is really surprising. Anyway, moving on to our sponsor of today, Pepsi. Quench your thirst with the refreshing taste of Pepsi. Whether you're at a party, hanging out with your friends, or simply relaxing at home, Pepsi brings that perfect blend of sweetness and fizz to every moment. Grab a Pepsi and enjoy the classic cola flavor that never goes out of style. Pepsi. So this will be, sadly, the last episode of Myths and Mysteries. I know, I see tears on everybody's faces. I see tears running down. It's very sad. But I'm not going to continue doing this outside of class. I will probably move on to my own personal things, editing and such. Hopefully editing for other people. I'm praying. But that would just about wrap up the final episode of Myths and Mysteries. I'm sorry, everybody. I know you wanted to see so much more. Everybody's crying in the studio right now. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, that just about wraps up the final episode. I hope you all had fun with me on this beautiful show, just as much fun as I've had with all of you. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Hello everyone, my name is Robbie Heaney and this is the Pylon Pundit. This will be the final episode of this series, and for that I wanted to circle back to my very first episode where I talked about some key storylines that I was going to personally be watching out for throughout the season and that I thought were just noteworthy. Now that we're a few weeks into the season, I just kind of want to revisit them, see how they have played out, if they've played out at all, what I kind of predicted them. But before we get into that, I just want to take a quick second to talk about today's sponsor, and that is NFL Shop. So I got my Bears hoodie on here. Got it from NFL Shop. Obviously, they have all the teams. You can create an account, set your favorite teams, so they'll send you emails when team gear is on discounts or things like that. So if you want to get the best gear to support your team, go to NFLshop.com. So the first storyline that I had noted was Caleb Williams and the Bears, seeing how they played out, if Caleb Williams was going to be kind of all he was hyped up to be. In the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, it wasn't looking good for them. He had a really rough go, but the last 3 weeks he's seemed to turn a corner. He's been playing at a really high level. They've won the last 3 games in a row. On the season so far, he has 9 total touchdowns, about 1,300 yards, and is completing 65% of his passes. Those are pretty solid numbers for a rookie, especially factoring in the slow start at the beginning. He still has a couple too many turnovers, but again, that's also expected with a rookie quarterback. I think it's just promising that he's not making those same bad throws, those same kind of mistakes over and over. He's just feeling out what he's able to do at this level compared to college, and as it all comes together, he's been looking better and better. So I think Bears fans, myself included, should be very excited. The second segment that I had was the new kickoff format that they've been trying out this year. Personally, I've felt very underwhelmed with it so far. I had some high hopes. A lot of people said that it was going to lead to a lot more big plays on special teams. And there's been a couple, but I just don't think it's been any more significant big plays than the previous one. Perhaps there's data that there's less injuries occurring this year compared to last year. We probably won't know for sure until the end of the season if that's the case, but if that is true, that would be a positive, of course. The return rate is up slightly compared to last year, but last year was at an all-time low, so it's not really too big of a jump in the right direction. So overall, I'm not super happy with it, but time will tell as they figure it out more and more. And then the final storyline I had for my first episode was Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, just seeing if he was going to be that player that we remember in Green Bay, or if his age and injury kind of were going to catch up to him. And so far, it is kind of looking like the latter. The Jets are kind of in a rough spot right now. They just fired their head coach last week after losing to the Vikings in London. Aaron Rodgers just does not look like his old self. He's making throws that are just getting picked off left and right, things you never saw out of him in Green Bay. They're sitting at 2-3, so it's not like their season's completely over. Perhaps the new coach will kind of inject some energy into the team and they can kind of turn the corner. They're still able to compete for their division, so I'm not saying that their season's lost entirely, but I just don't think it's gone at all what they were hoping or expecting it to be. And they do play later tonight, so first game with the new head coach. We'll see if things change or if it's going to be that same old Jets that we know. And those were the 3 storylines that I had from the first week's episode. Things have kind of played out, so we have a better idea of how they've gone. So before I go, I just wanted to show you guys a little PSA video to everyone out there watching.
As a Bears fan living in Green Bay, Wisconsin, I'm used to getting a lot of smack talk coming my direction, and I get it. We haven't been very good for a while now. In your shoes, I would do the same exact thing. But this year, I think we have a common enemy. 2 common enemies, actually. The Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions. They both look to be the teams to beat in our division this year, and I personally just think that's wrong. So I say that Bears fans and Packers fans join forces this season and root for the mutual destruction of the Vikings and Lions. I'm not saying I'm going to be rooting for the Packers to win every game, but when you guys play the Vikings or when you guys play the Lions, I'm going to be rooting for you guys. Every other game of the year, sure, you can lose, but the Vikings and Lions cannot be the two teams at the top of the division at the end of the year. So I hope that you'll join me, root on the Bears in those 4 games. I know it's crazy, but 4 games isn't that much. We just cannot have the Vikings or the Lions once again being the team at the top of our division, maybe even the conference. That's just not a world that I want to live in.
And with that, we've finished up the last episode of the Pylon Pundit. Thank you everybody for watching.